Hello everyone. Today I have a very special guest with me, Damien Riggins from the Card Guys. This is a part in my deck building series where I interview famous deck builders to kind of put a little spotlight on them, and maybe they can teach us how to deck build ourselves. What's up, Damien? How you doing?
I'm doing good today. How you doing?
I'm doing great as well. Damien is most known for building the Pleiades Fatigue deck list. And I'll start off each of these episodes by paying some respects to the deck builder in question. Now it's Damien. And I really respect about Damien that he's really good at targeting existing meta games. Of course, Fatigue Pleiades was a standout deck. Deck kind of rumored behind the scenes that it was kind of good, but it didn't really have any results as of yet. You already had a Metafy, you had some Battle Hardened top 8s with the deck as well. And then in Calling Columbus, you top 8'd with Fatigue Pleiades with Thomas Everett on the same list. And then it was undeniable, Fatigue Pleiades was a real deck. And it has been ever since that. So, my first question regarding this respect: how do you become good at building decks that target existing metagames?
I think you have to pick like a hero that has different tools than so off meta heroes. They all have their own tools to build certain archetypes, and you have to really like look into what cards that they can run. Like you know, I've been told that I play a lot of fatigue decks, but I've tried to build every hero as a fatigue deck, so I know how they could do it all differently. So you have to find out what makes a hero unique and how it specifically targets specific decks and how it can gain an edge over other decks trying to do such things. And that's how you like start to build a deck.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So, your main game plan is to target other decks, and your main way of doing that is usually by fatigue. What made you like fatigue so much?
I like decks that are consistent. I used to play Dash IO a lot for like months, and you draw hands that are just like there are hands that you draw as Dash IO. They're just actually unplayable. Doesn't matter how skilled you are as a player. You draw 4 items, you basically lose the game on the spot.
Yeah,
These decks really they started to irk me at some point, and I started to stop playing them.
that makes sense. Um, So yeah, we're kind of touched on it a little bit already. But that's my first question of the interview. That's a little bit more generic about generic deck building. Like, what is your personal preferred deck building style? How would you describe it yourself?
More defensive leaning because I feel that blocking and defensive cards are very consistent in the game. That's why they can't be too powerful, in my opinion, is because they're always available to you. Outside of like situations like Command and Conquer on like hands with defense range and whatnot. But yeah, it would lean more towards like a consistent deck building style, maybe more on the defensive side.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Fatigue Pleiades being the prime example of that. And another really funny example, and that's when I really was like, oh wow, this guy knows how to deck build, is when we played Victor Goldmane. I played Victor Goldmane against your Yarl, and I was assured at this point in time that Victor would just beat Yarl 100 times out of 100 times. But you said, okay, let's play. When are you available? You were immediately very confident. Uh, can you tell me what happened?
Yeah. You played a normal Jarl deck into me, and then you got Okanolded infinite times and died. And then you said, surely this cannot be the Fatigue Victor deck that's rolling around that all it does is block and send infinite stacked gold main estates. And you played that into me and also lost to Okanold.
Yeah, yeah. That's when I was really thinking, like, oh damn, that's pretty cool. How do you manage to find out these kind of end games? Because um, at the time, like I said, it was regarded that Victor was extremely favored into Jarl just because he could stack all the gold with the estates, and then Jarl couldn't really do anything. And to give a little bit of example for the viewers, Damien just literally blocked with every card in his deck until he had only Oaken and Crumbles left, and then 9 dominated me, 9 dominated me, 9 dominated me. and I couldn't beat it. How do you find out those kind of game plans? What goes on in your mind?
When you're looking at a bad matchup, you need to look at how they beat you and if
Mm-hmm.
there's any way to mitigate that. So it's not about how you win. You should look about how you lose the game and if there are ways to like make it very hard for your opponent to enact their game plan. You like as an example for Victor, the only way you lost to Victor was that he got the block with his test of strengths and whatnot, make a bunch of gold and play gold mini states. So if you look at it from this point of view, if you're playing Yarl, you have Coronet Peak and Gauntlets, so you can filter your hand faster than they can if you leave them with a full grip if they're not attacking. So you would just like get so if you don't attack anybody, that means they filter their hand less and they have more cards in their deck. So if I swing at the Victor, they can block with cards and their deck gets lower and lower. If I'm the only one spending cards from my deck, other than the one attack you send a turn, I'm going to get to like 5 cards in the deck faster than they are. Something like that, you know. So basically all you're looking to do is find ways to stop your opponent from enacting their game plan. Is how you find weaknesses in the top meta decks that are bad matchups.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a super creative way at looking at the game, I think, because most people look at this turn-to-turn value, how can I maximize my hand? And you're essentially just taking a little bit of a helicopter view, like what's really going on in the game, and like, do I even need to attack my opponent to get it to a winning game state? And yeah, that, like I was really inspired by that. So let's go to another question, and that is, what advice would you give to someone that wants to learn how to make decks themselves? Like, what are the core principles of building a deck?
Core principles are obviously looking at all the cards that you could play in the deck. What makes a hero special to a deck? Like the first thing I'll do when I look at a hero is I'll look at their extended card pool that the other heroes don't have access to, and see if there's anything that's intrinsically broken, or anything that it could do that just like completely is blindsides people that they wouldn't expect cards to do. So that's where I would start. And then when you're building a deck, I wouldn't look at like you can look at the value of cards. You know, we talk in terms of like 3 for 7s, 2 for 6s, and whatnot. But there are situations where you're putting cards in your deck that may not have the best value, but they have very deterministic ways to like win games, or they have like value that is not printed on the card.
I see. What are some examples of these that you've been inspired by, that inspired your deck building?
So one of them would be Imperial Seal of Command. This card is basically just an item that sits on the board. You don't know how much value it's going to get, but it guarantees something later in the game, and that's worth more than it being like a value card. So, like, even if the card got 0 value, the card guaranteed that you could make a playline that was incredibly greedy.
I
And
see. And such a card is a key card you can build a deck around.
yes, you can build pitch text around that card. Another card that you saw me play in Yarl was Burdens the Past. You would play this as a blue block breed that could block for 4 off of like an embodiment of Earth. But at the end of the game, against something like Fatigue Victor or other decks that play defense reactions, you could play Burdens of the Past and then like tear asunder and Oakenold, and they couldn't play defense reactions. You could just rip entire late game hands away from your opponent if that's what if their strategy involved, like second cycle and whatnot.
That sounds really interesting. Okay, so here the plan kind of starts. You found a card that you built your deck around. You found a turn that you're working towards. And that turn, like you said, is guaranteed because your opponent cannot play defense reactions. Okay, but that turn won't win you the game out of nowhere, right? Like, you need some cards to support it. How do you find a way to support all these cards?
You just have to look at the entire card pool. Like it, you know, there's so many cards in the game. You would you'd be surprised at how often I think I'm putting Rusted Relic in my deck. It's a lot. Uh,
The item that
you have
AB
to look
wants.
yes, yeah. It's you just like have to look at everything. You know, even if the idea of the card sounds ridiculous, you know, you won't know if it's ridiculous till you test it. You just have to play a lot of games to get this kind of experience and information on like if this card is good or not.
Yeah, yeah, because a deck, of course, needs good cards. And the more good cards the deck has, the better it is. That does make a lot of sense. Um, So you've been deck building for a long time. I did a little bit of research on your history with decks. I found some pretty cool stuff because most people know you for playing Fatigue decks. You've played a lot of Fatigue Pleiades in the past. You've played Yarl in the past. For PT Yokohama, you finished 11th and you had a lot of shots at top 8 at that tournament. And you played Victor Goldmane, although it wasn't aggro, or it wasn't Fatigue. If I'm correct, it was more of an aggro deck. Is that true?
No, the Victor deck was a Fatigue deck.
Oh, it was.
Yeah, that was the Goldmane State deck.
I see. Yeah, and there's this funny story of you and Jason Rolfe being in the same team or testing buddies, and you were both playing Michael Hamilton, and Michael Hamilton siding against you as if you were playing aggro, but you were playing Fatigue. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah, that's why I thought.
What had happened was I talked to Jason the moment he got up from his game. I was like, how'd you win, Jason? And he goes, no, I didn't win. And then I played against Hamilton next round, and I think he told me that he sided wrong because he saw me talking to Jason, so he might have thought we were on the same list. I thought that was pretty funny coincidence.
Yeah. That was quite a funny story. So looking back a little bit, your first result was with Dromai in Calling Baltimore, way back in the day. So you've played a little bit of Illusionist. But another very cool result I saw was you also finished 11th, coincidentally, with Riptide in the Aurora and Enigma meta. Can you tell me a little bit about that deck?
It was 23rd, I think.
Oh, it was 23rd. Okay, then.
Yeah, so I love playing Riptide. I think he's my favorite hero out of all the heroes. He just sucks right now. Yeah, I tried to make him work every so often. I tried to make him work a week ago. It did not work. Yeah, so I was playing an aggro-slanted Riptide list with Dreadbore. I don't know if you know what Dreadbore does. Apparently, a lot of my opponents don't.
Can't play defense reactions from hand.
Yes, you cannot play defense reactions from hand on my arrows. And at the time, Enigma played a lot of defense reactions, and you had this sick hero called Merkmark Grapnel. You were just a very aggressive deck. I actually matched Aaron Grace in day 2, round 1 of CC, and I beat him up with arrows. That's just great. You know, traps would ping their boards. Like, you swing a Mirror Guy and you don't have protection. I play a trap and it dies. You just lost your attack, you lost your board. Stuff like that. And then it had a pretty decent Aurora matchup. Aurora didn't block that well, and your arrows are pretty above rate for what they are. And traps are very powerful, especially, his legendaries. So I figured it was a really good bring at the time, so I did it.
Yeah. Again, you targeted the metagame pretty well. Aurora and Enigma were the best decks. And you had a Blade Beckoner equipment in your deck as well, you told me. What was the idea behind that?
So it was for multiple breakpoints. At the time, New was also a legal hero.
True.
So the boots were for Aurora because the only games I would come close to losing were times they resolved to channel the Lightning Valley and I couldn't cover Starfall properly.
Mm-hmm.
And into other matchups, they were really good boots. Like into New, you could block with Leap No Witnesses with a card in Blade Beckoner and then use the Blade Beckoner on a Beckoning Mistblade swing because those don't have piercing. So they were just nichely broken boots. They would still be in my deck list if it wasn't for Omnis.
I see. The new boots that prevent 1 damage.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we already discussed, you are very good at targeting decks. Is it then maybe a little bit hard in a new meta game? Does your deck building style maybe have to change a little bit if you don't really know what decks are the established decks, or do you have a way to deal with that?
Usually when I don't know the top meta decks, I would have a blanket solution to everything. It would lower your percentage into the overall field, but you would you would have an answer for almost everything. Although you would have some dead cards in your deck depending on which heroes you specifically wanted to target.
Right. And for the last few months, I have to say, you have chosen Yarl. Why is that? Why have you chosen Yarl?
Yarl just had he has the biggest card pool in the game. I think that if you really wanted to beat any specific deck in the game with Yarl, you could actually make it happen. With his card pool, he's got a pretty crazy card pool. He's also got very powerful cards like Felling, Plowwinder, Oakenold. And he has like equipment destruction. So if your deck relies on equipment, you know, he can blow up certain pieces of equipment. Very good defensive tools. He's just an all-round good hero. He's currently struggling into the new cards the Warriors have gotten out of hand. So yeah, I'd have put him on the back burner for now, but he is quite a great hero if you wanted to target anything in particular.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect match with your style, indeed. All right, let's go to the next big question. What has been your personal biggest level up moment in your deck building journey?
Is to look at cards in a very flexible manner. Just because a card doesn't read good, you should realize what it's supposed to be doing, and like the overall arc of things. Like it's just like Imperial Seal. Like a card may read good, but it may not perform good. Like in my holodeck, I don't play Blade Flurry because it's not consistent enough to swing twice that you would get full value from some of these cards, even though these cards are very high value, and you would put them into a deck that could swing twice most of the time, right? Blade Flurry, Slice and Dice, stuff like that. You must look at when you read a card, you must look at how your deck functions, and if even though it's a good card, can this card make it into your deck?
I see. So you're just figuring out what are the common play lines of this deck, and you're doing that by playing as many games as possible. And then you're
Yes.
re-evaluating the cards that looked good and say like, okay, this is how this deck plays. Does it fit in the deck? Kind of like a puzzle piece.
Yeah, I play thousands of games a year, so it's
Yeah, well, that is quite impressive. Um, I knew during the U.S. Nationals metagame you tested so many games. You tested Ziggy a bunch. I think Victor might have tested a bunch as well, and then ended up on Yarl, and I think you made 11th with that Yarl list as well. Is that correct? Yeah.
yes.
Um, so yeah, that was really really cool to see. Um, then let's go to another question, and I can imagine as a deck builder you build a lot of decks,
Yeah.
just to kind of strengthen the muscle, kind of train the muscle. But how do you truly know a deck that you built is viable at the top level?
I would say that, obviously you have to test it against the decks and win some games, but the deck has to like feel smooth. You can't have hands that don't function. You can't have hands that like can't convert consistently. If you're left with a hand, I like to build my deck in a way where if you could, draw a hand, you can convert it. But the main thing is just like it might sound like I'm just like it's like a vibe thing, but the it's just like does the deck feel really smooth to play and does it win X amount of games? Do your strategies work as you intended them when you built the deck?
I see. And can you give an example of this?
Um, let's see. An example of this would be like when I was building Pleiades, we knew the deck was real. When we were losing, I mean, we were losing games against top decks after misplaying the entire game. But we knew that we were playing wrong. So after fixing that, after adding consistency cards, using the tough smash ups like off ability, like correctly, and tightening up your gameplay. It's not that the deck was bad. It's just that we sucked at piloting it correctly. That's also a problem with certain decks. After you like learn how to manipulate your deck in a certain way while playing the deck, you realize the deck is actually incredibly powerful. You play it completely perfectly.
Right. And so, how do you know a deck has that capability? Because if you would build a deck from scratch, before it is fully optimized, because first you need to start like with the fundamentals of the deck. But you kind of need to know beforehand how to build the optimal version of a deck before you can also play optimally, right? Or am I saying something weird there?
You need to know how to build a deck before you can play it properly, yes. Uh, I usually, build all my decks from the ground up, so every card in the deck has like a meaning. You can ask me why any particular card is in my Pleiades deck, and I can tell you like I can tell you why it's in the deck and it's probably for multiple reasons. I would never put in a card for like a singular reason unless the hero's a metric problem for the deck.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I've heard as well from a friend, because I asked also a friend of mine um, how to. It's kind of glazing, let's be honest, but I that's kind of the nature of this deck building series. And a friend of mine said you make very coherent decks. You don't play cards because they are good, but you play cards because they fit with the idea of the deck. So they're helping towards the win con. Every card in your deck do something and have a reason to be in the deck. And he's good at using limited deck space for changing a bad matchup in Flesh and Blood. Is that kind of something you agree with as well?
Yeah, if you tell me the card's in the deck because it's a blue block 3, I'm gonna tell you to take the card out of your deck. Put in a card that actually does something. Like your card, we're at a point in the game where heroes have such a good card pool that a blue block 3 is like that's not the floor anymore. That's like a pretty bad like card to put in your deck. Yeah, if you look at my deck list, you see that I try to make as much room as possible. My deck list is never like coherent with 3 ofs. It's all just like 1 and 2 ofs, and 3 ofs of like the really important cards to your deck.
I see. Okay, that's
Makes my local huntsmen go. That's really annoying. You know,
yeah.
they I didn't see a 1 of, and they go, ah, God.
That's very interesting. You say the game has changed a little bit, so blue block threes isn't the standard anymore. Why is that?
Because I feel like if you had to lay down your hand, so for example, you'll find this like if you lose tempo as a deck that plays from not they don't play turn to turn. So for example, Hala has to play power turns
Mm-hmm.
in increments. Like they don't play them back to back to back that often unless they're destroying hot. If your hand ends up just blocking 12 and you're against something like Phi, then you're going to fall behind because Phi goes over 12 so often. But if you have cards like Fiddler, Sink Below, you can like mitigate the entire turn sequence and maybe gain life or net even. But if you have these cards that you put in your deck, there's blue block 3s. You have to even if you block with them, you're falling behind because the value of the card was still only worth 3.
Yeah, that's kind of that's funny because Bartosz Jemba, I don't know if you notice, also a very good deck builder, has said that he builds his deck in a way that the cards have a high floor but also a high ceiling. Is that something you agree with as well?
Yeah, that's why like a card that blocks for 3 is like it has to do more than that. There's no way that's all I can do.
Right. So, conclusion: the blue block threes are bad because the floor and the ceiling is just three, and we preferably want cards to be worth more.
The game has evolved past blue block through being acceptable, I believe.
I see. And I want to kind of dig in on what you said about 1 offs, 2 offs, 3 offs, because usually people kind of vibes base this. Like, you put a 1 off in, like a 1 off Amulet of Echoes to maybe hope to draw it against a Cilio. You put maybe 2 of a card because you don't want to draw more than 2 in the same hand, so playing 2 of them reduces the chance. Do you have a specific reason why you're playing 1 off or 2 off? Is it more mathematical, or does it have another reason?
Yeah. So a three of is reserved for cards that cannot leave the deck. Like they're the core building blocks deck. 2 ofs are cards that you don't want to draw 2 copies of, because there are certain cards that are good, but they're not good enough if you draw them in clumps. They're very like detrimental, and they could be like pretty backbreaking. 1 ofs are cards that you only need 1 copy in your deck because they serve a very like specific purpose. Like for example, you can play a bunch of attack reactions in Hala and play Lessons Learned because you can shuffle back cards with different names. It gives you a lot of variety at the end of the game when you put back these attack reactions you play 1 of. Like 1 Jagged Edge goes a long way into certain matchups, and so does 1 Swordmaster Shine. Stuff like that. You only need 1 copy of these cards.
Interesting. So cards that have only 1 copy usually have some sort of very specific use case for them.
Yes.
I see. All right. Another question I have for you is building decks for the Pro Tour level and the Calling level. Is there a difference in approach for you, or is this the same approach?
It's mostly the same approach for the calling and the Pro Tour level. If it were something like locals, it's a different kind of deck building though, because you have more targeted like into like a calling and Pro Tour, you have like a very wide field. You
Yeah.
actually may not even encounter the best deck or the most represented deck at the tournament. I've had that happen multiple times where the most represented deck, I've never matched them in 12 rounds. Like you know, if you think about it, it is still only like 10-15% of the room. So
Right.
you have to like tailor your deck building to a wider field, you know, into like smaller things like maybe battle hardens or local events. You could target a more specified field because you know you'll play them.
Right. So the decks kind of changed dramatically then, or if you're target.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Um. So I kind of want to close off with maybe getting some info out here. You're talking a lot about Hala. Is that your next deck that you are going to optimize, or is this?
Yeah, I'm definitely already working it. I've been posting the deck list in places. I mean, my current deck list is not that far off from the one I streamed some number of weeks ago. And yeah, I'll be taking it to the calling in Kansas City.
Kansas
So I'll
City?
be playing Hala in Kansas City.
That's going to be really exciting to see. I'm very excited what you brewed up there. Damien, uh, I want to thank you a lot for sharing your insights. It was great to get you on and pick your brain about these topics. If you have any closing words, now's the time.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, if you want to see more Hala content in the future, make sure to come over to the Card Guys channel. I will definitely be the main focus of my streams going forward.
Hell yeah. The Card Guys, go there and see Damien stream as well. Thanks again for the interview. We'll see what he cooked up at Calling KC. And on to the next video. Later, guys.